Come on over across that river. You can worship me in any of those places over there. After all, you know you got kinfolk over there. You know you got some cousins over there. God is going to choose the place, neighbor. Just like God chose the place in the New Testament. There is only one worship place today. There is only one worship place today.
That's true.
Despite what you see down the highway and the byway. Let me say it again. There is only one worship place today, neighbor.
That's true. That's true.
And that's the church of Christ. There's only one worship place. Just like there's only one worship place in the Old Testament. God says he is going to choose the place to put his name there. Let's notice something else here. I believe the text still unfolds some things here. Notice something here. Notice something in verse number 13. Because when you get across that river, you're going to see all kinds of idolatry over there. You're going to see all kinds of things. People call themselves worshiping God the same way you see today. Amen. People today, they're doing any and everything and claiming to be worshiping God today. Even some of my brethren. That's right. Amen. Even some of my brethren. Yes. Yes. Doing some of everything today. Claiming to be worshiping God. Yes. You can't worship God any kind of way you want to.
That's true, brother.
That's not up to man. That's up to God. Amen. Read that passage for us.
Take heed to thyself.
Please follow the Bible. Please follow the Bible. That's what we study. We study the Bible, neighbor. You take heed to yourself. Read.
That thou offer not thy burnt offerings in every place that thou seest.
Are you sure that's in the Bible? You cannot worship God in every place that you see. Well, then where can I worship God? Read it, please. But
in the place which the Lord shall choose.
But in the place which the Lord shall choose. Amen. God is going to choose the place. God chose the place today. God tells us how he wants to be worshiped. It is not about my personal desire. It is not about my personal feelings, how I want to worship God. Amen. We better try to get that straight. We better try to get that straight before God calls us home. Yeah. We better try to get that straight. Worship is from God. God tells us how he wants to be worshiped and not man.
That's right.
That's not only in the New Testament, that's in the Old Testament. Whatsoever things are written aforetime was written for my instructions. I can go to the Old Testament for my instructions for learning. So God says that. I want you to notice how many times God says that. Look at your Bibles. I want you to mark this real quickly. And then we'll go on to some other considerations. Notice something here. God says he's going to choose a place in verse 5. Mark that. Underscore verse 11. Then there shall be a place. Look at verse number 14. But in the place. How many times God have to say that? Look at verse number 18. But thou must eat them before the Lord thy God in the place which the Lord thy God shall choose. Right. Look at verse number 26. There it is again. Thou shalt take and go unto the place which the Lord your God shall choose. God is going to choose the place. Now let's go back to Deuteronomy 7. In Deuteronomy 7, here God says some things about all of those people that is worshiping God over there. Brothers and sisters, friends and neighbors, let me ask you this question, and you can be honest with yourself. What is the process and the procedure? What is the criteria by which you make a determination of where you're going to worship God? Amen. What criteria, what procedure that you use? What is the objective standard that you base your decision on where you're going to worship God?
That's right.
Well, you can't go to the yellow pages because Deuteronomy 11 tells us that. Let's go back there, stick up here to Deuteronomy 7. Notice something in Deuteronomy 12 and see what the criteria. The criteria is this. In Deuteronomy 12. Notice in verse number 30. What's going to be the criteria? Take heed to yourself that you do what? Take heed in verse 30.
That you be not snared by following them.
Let me tell you something, friend. Don't you be snared by these so-called praise teams. Don't you be snared by these so-called hand-clapping congregations. Don't you be snared by that. I'm going to let you marinate in that for a moment. I want to know what's the criteria by which we determine where we can worship God and go to heaven.
That's true.
Read it.
After that they be destroyed from before thee.
They're going to be destroyed from before thee.
And that thou inquire not after their God.
You see that word inquire there? Oh, what they doing up in there? How they worship? You don't inquire how to worship Molech. You don't inquire how to worship Astaroth. You don't inquire, oh, how can I worship Baal? You are worshiping God. What is the criteria? Amen. You don't make a determination where you're going to worship by how many new cars out there in the parking lot. About how many single men or single women in the congregation.
Preach.
Or how well the choir sings. Or whether or not the preacher got on a beautiful robe. That's not the objective standard by which you make a determination where you can worship and get to heaven.
That's true.
The Bible says don't even inquire about those things. Now, go back to Deuteronomy 7 real quickly. Deuteronomy 7 real quickly. Let me show you this. In Deuteronomy 7 real quickly. There's a couple of things I want to point out before we go to some other considerations. In Deuteronomy 7, notice, when the Lord thy God shall bring thee into the land whether thou goest to possess it, and have did what?
Cast out many nations before thee, the Hittites, the Girgashites, Amorites, the Canaanites,
Perizzites,
and the Hivites,
the
Jebusites. 7 nations greater and mightier than thou.
7 nations greater and mightier than thou. Read just a little bit more.
And when the Lord thy God shall deliver them before thee, thou shalt smite them and utterly destroy them.
You see what God says? God says, I want you to smite them and I want you to utterly destroy them. See, God is going to clean the nation out for them. He's going to clean Palestine, Jerusalem out for them, and he did. But the reason why, you see, when you come after Joshua's 70 year of leadership, you come to the next 350 years, that's the period of the Judges, all the book of Judges, all the book of Ruth, and the first 8 chapters of the book of 1 Samuel. These people are right back, pricks, in God's people's side because they didn't do what God told them to do. They didn't do what God told them to do. God wants his people to be in a land that flows with milk and honey. Amen. That's the reason why in Deuteronomy 7 and Deuteronomy 6, he tells them the kind of home that he wants over there. He tells them the kind of government in chapter 16 and 17 he wants over there, because God wants his people to live in blissful splendor. That's what God, and that's the reason why he cleaned it up. Read just a little bit more, because there's something in there I got to clip off. You know, I'm telling you something now. See, when I preach, listen to me carefully. I'm going to be doing some clipping. I'm telling you now, I'm going to be doing some clipping. All right. It's no difference if you go to the doctor and you have an abdominal situation there and you got that intestine hanging over there and that doctor might as well, while he got you, just clip that on out. There's no sense in sewing you back up and the next month he got to open you right back up and go back in there. Just clip that thing on out. You take your car to a mechanic, and that mechanic, you got to have that head reworked, the magnum flop, and while he got the head on it, he see a piston getting ready to blow out of there, you might as well go and ring it too. Amen. Yes, sir. What to put the head back on there, and then as soon as the pressure go up, boom, there piston, you'll be mad at your mechanic. That's right. While you got the head off, you just might as well go ahead and ring it.
Teach, brother, teach.
That's exactly what I'm going to be doing this week. Because I believe in swinging the pot low enough so everybody can sup from the same pot. Now notice something here. I got something I got to clip off here. Read.
Thou shalt make no covenant with them.
Notice, thou shalt make no covenant with them. Hold it, wait a minute. Thou shalt make no covenant with them. Now, let's go to 2 Chronicles. I want you to stick a pin right there. Let's go to 2 Chronicles. I want to look at the 4th king of the south. Rehoboam, Abiah, Asa, Jehoshaphat. The 4th king of the south. That's what I want to look at. Thou shalt make no covenant with them. Notice what happens here in 2 Chronicles. And while I'm in 2 Chronicles, let me just tell you, the book of Chronicles, 2 Chronicles, or the book of Chronicles, they was written for the purpose of indoctrinating the people who was going back into the land of Jerusalem. They are coming out of Babylonian captivity, and the Chronicles was written to indoctrinate those people. Don't get back into Babylonian captivity again. That's what the book of Chronicles was written, and that's why you just about read the same verse or verses in the Kings. So you have to know what the book of Chronicles was written for. Now, here in 2 Chronicles, thou shalt make no covenant with them. I want you to notice something here. And Jehoshaphat, that's the king, 2 Chronicles 19. And Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, the 4th king of the south, returned to his house in peace to Jerusalem. And Jehu, the son of Hananiah the seer, went out to meet Jehoshaphat. And King Jehoshaphat said, what? Shouldest thou help the ungodly and love them that hate the Lord? I want you to answer that question there. That question is to you and to me. Answer that question. But you know what happens here? Jehoshaphat, this is what happened. You know what he does? He goes down there and starts fraternizing with those kings of the south. Those 19 kings of the south. Jeroboam, Nadab, Beasha, Elam, Zimri, Umri, Ahaz, Ahaziah, Jehoram, Jehu, Jehoahaz, Joash, Zechariah, Shalom, Menahem, Pekahiah, Pekah, and the last king of the north was a man by the name of Hoshea. Every one of them walked in the footsteps of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, which made Israel to sin. What Jeroboam did in 1 Kings 13, every one of those 18 kings followed right behind them. Nobody tried to correct them. Every one of them was wicked kings. Now let's look at this one in chapter 20 real quickly here. In chapter 20, notice something here. In chapter 20, and verse number 35. Chapter 20 and verse number 35. What does the book say?
And after this did Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, join himself with Ahaziah.
Join himself with Ahaziah. That's the king. That's the 8th king of the north. Read.
King of Israel. Who did very wickedly.
Read.
And he joined himself with him to make ships to go to Tarshish.
Hold it, wait a minute, brother. Are you serious? Now, did not we just read a holy mandate from God in Deuteronomy 7? And God told them not to make no covenant with these people? And I want to know, did that man violate God's law? Yes. God had just told them in Deuteronomy 7 not to make any covenant with these people. And here this man go into a shipbuilding business with one of God's enemies. And if you read on down, you see the ships didn't even work. The ships didn't even work. I'm just showing you how people think they can just do anything in the world they want to. Man has never been without authority. I has never been without authority. Well, Brother Shepherd, aren't you the head of your house? Yes! But there is somebody that's over me, neighbor. Amen. And that's what's wrong with a whole lot of us men. That's right. And we wonder why our wives don't give us the submission that God said. She probably giving you what you giving to God. You get yourself right with God, then your wife will submit to you. Amen. Oh yes, that's right. Amen. This man violated God's law. Because there's always somebody that's over us. God is over it all, neighbor. You can mark that down. Go back to that Deuteronomy 7. There's something else in there I want to do. I want to clip off real quick. Go back to that Deuteronomy 7. Go back to that Deuteronomy 7. You just stick a pin in that in 2nd Chronicles. We'll come back there. Notice something in Deuteronomy 7. Notice something. Read it, please.
Thou shalt make no covenant with them, nor show mercy unto them.
Don't show any mercy unto them.
Neither shalt thou make marriages with them.
Hold it. Are you sure? Are you sure? Neither shall ye make marriages with them. Neither shall ye make marriages with them. Let me tell you something, neighbor. God did not tell those people not to marry those people because they were from another race. God told them not to marry those people because they were following another God.
That's right.
They were following another God. You can marry whoever you want to marry. You can marry Chinese, Vietnamese, Japanese, whoever you want to marry. God told those people not to marry those people because they were following another God. And they were going to turn their heart against God. And that's what happens, young people. You go out there and marry a child of the devil, you're going to have problems at your father-in-law. Better get that stuff straight before you say I do. Better try to get it straight. Notice something. God says need to make marriages unto them. Now go back to that 2nd Chronicles. Let me show you something here. Go back to that 2nd Chronicles. And I hope you follow me down. I'll be through here in a minute. Go back to that 2nd Chronicles. I want to show you something here. 2nd Chronicles, chapter 21. Now Jehoshaphat slept with his fathers and was buried with his fathers in the city of David. And Jehoram, his son, reigned in his stead. And he had brethren, sons, Jehoshaphat, Azariah, Jehiel, Zechariah, Azariah, Michael, Shebaniah. All these were the sons of Jehoshaphat, king of Israel. Now watch something here, if you will. In verse number 5, Jehoram was what?
32 years old.
Read.
He began to reign.
When he began to reign.
And he reigned.
And he reigned?
What, 8 years in Jerusalem. And he walked in the way of the kings of Israel.
Now he walked in the ways of those 19 wicked kings in Israel that followed what Jeroboam did in 1 Kings 12:13. Read just a little bit more.
Like as did the house of Ahab, for he had the daughter of Ahab to wife.
Hold it, wait a minute. He did what?
He had the daughter of Ahab to wife.
You know what happened? This boy's daddy, Jehoshaphat, the 4th king of the south, he kept going down there fraternizing with those kings of the north. When God told him not to do that. We've already read that in 2 Kings 19. And you know what happened? He kept on fraternizing with him, until his son married the 2nd most wickedest woman in the Bible. Because her mama is the most wickedest.
Preach, brother. Preach.
And I want to know, did he violate Deuteronomy 7? God says not to make marriages with those people. Now we got this boy, Jehoram. He go and marries Athaliah. Her granddaddy was Ethbaal, who started Baalism for the Sidonians, who had a daughter named Jezebel, who married Ahab. That's exactly what happens when we go against God's law. There's going to be some difficulty, neighbor. You can mark that down. When we don't do it God's way, there is going to be some difficulty. We must do what God says. Amen. So now we see what happens here in Deuteronomy 7. So let's go back there and let's read it, and then I'll try to close this thing out. Let's go back. Now here, it says, neither make marriages with them. Thy daughter thou shalt not give unto his son, nor his daughter shalt thou take unto thy son. This is the reason why. For they will turn away thy son from following me, that they may serve other gods. Not because they were from another race, but because they were following another God, neighbor.
That's right.
They were following another God. So here we see the mandate, because God says when you go across that river, I want a certain kind of home, I want a certain kind of religion, and I want a certain kind of government. That's what God says. Now, God says he was going to name the place. Now, let's get the name and then we'll quit. Now, let's look at something here. Back to Deuteronomy 12. Deuteronomy 12, God says he was going to name the place. Let's find out what that name is, because that name today is Church of Christ. That's what that name is today. Church of Christ. Now, in the Old Testament, we see God says in verse 5, verse 11, verse 13, verse 14, verse 18, and verse 26. God says that he was going to name the place. Now let's go across that river. Let's go across that river. Now when we go across that river, we're going to be dealing with the next 70 years of the period of conquest. That is Joshua. Let's go there. Let's turn your Bibles to the book of Joshua. In Joshua chapter number 18. Now the first 12 chapters of the book of Joshua, what you have, those people are going to go across that river and they're going to conquer that land. The last 12 chapters of the book of Joshua, they're going to divide that land up between Reuben, Simeon, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Gad, Asher, Joseph, Benjamin, Dan, and Naphtali. Everybody but Levi. So now we need to find out what that name is. Notice Joshua chapter number 18 with me. Joshua chapter number 18. They'll cross that river, because that's what God says. When you go across that river, I'm going to name the place. Let's see, did he name the place for the Canaanites, or the Hittites, or the Hivites, or the Jebusites, or the Amorites, or the Perizzites? In Joshua chapter 18 and verse number 1. Where are they, brother?
And the whole congregation of the children of Israel assembled together at Shiloh.
They assembled together where?
At Shiloh.
At Shiloh. At Shiloh. Read it, please.
And set up the tabernacle of the congregation there.
Now they set up the tabernacle of the congregation there. You remember in Exodus 25 when God called Moses up on Mount Sinai, and he told them wherever they set that congregation up, that tabernacle up, I'm going to meet with them, verses 21 and 22 of Exodus 25. Now notice something in verse number 8, real quickly there. In verse number 8. Verse number 8, what does the passage say?
And the men arose and went away.
Men arose and went away.
And Joshua charged them that went to describe the land.
Read.
Saying, go and walk through the land and describe it, and come again to me, that I may have here cast lots for you before the Lord in Shiloh.
Where?
In Shiloh.
Shiloh. Now we got him in Shiloh. Remember, God says he's going to name the place. And then in verse number 9, you'll see the same thing, and verse number 10. Now what we need to do real quickly, let's go to chapter 19. Let's go to chapter 19 of the book of Joshua. We're still in this same particular place. Chapter 19 of the book of Joshua. And I want you to look at verse number 51. Chapter 19 and verse number 51.
These are the inheritances which Eleazar the priest, and Joshua the son of Nun, the heads of the fathers of the tribes of the children of Israel, divided for an inheritance by lot in Shiloh.
Where?
In Shiloh.
Shiloh.
Before the Lord.
In Shiloh. Now, we see God says he was going to name the place before they crossed that river. Wherever the Ark of the Covenant is implied there, God has named it there, because God has a rigid law of inclusion and exclusion. He has a rigid law there. Now let's go to the next 350 years, because once you leave those 70 years, the period of Joshua, those 24 chapters, you come now to the period of the Judges. That's all of the book of Judges, all of the book of Ruth, and the first 8 chapters of the book of 1 Samuel. I want to look at and see what's going on there in Judges 18. In the 18th chapter of the book of Judges. Judges 18 and I believe verse number 31. Judges 18 and verse number 31. Remember, God says, I'm going to name the place. And if God is going to name the place, ain't nobody named the place today. And it's so ironic to me. You go around this town or any other town, you see all kind of places that's been named, like Baptist and like Methodist and like Seventh-day Adventist and like Jehovah. You see all of these places. I wonder who named those places. I wonder who named those places. Certainly wasn't God. Certainly wasn't God. That's something for you to think about. Now Judges 18 and verse 31, the book says what?
And they set them up Micah's graven image, which he made all the time that the house of God was in Shiloh.
The house of God was where?
In Shiloh.
Where?
In Shiloh.
So God said he was going to name the place. Now we see from other considerations, God says the house of God was at Shiloh. Let me clear up this Jerusalem confusion for you. But I know the mind is beginning to quail. How we get from Shiloh to Jerusalem, I'll show you in just a moment. I'll show you in just a moment. So now, let's go to 1 Samuel chapter number 3. I'm still in the period of the Judges. 1 Samuel chapter 3. 1 Samuel chapter number 3. Well, 1 Samuel chapter 1 would be good for us because here we have a man by the name of Elkanah. Had 2 wives, isn't that right? Peninnah and whatever that other one was named. And you remember, one of them was barren and one had children. And the one that was barren, whatever her name was, she said, even Brother Parker know that one, huh? Notice, in verse number 3, verse number 2, this man had 2 wives. And verse number 3, notice what's going on here.
This man went up out of his city yearly to worship and to sacrifice unto the Lord of hosts in Shiloh.
Why didn't he go to some of those other places? Because God named the place. He went up to Shiloh to worship God. Now you remember when this woman says, if you give me a son, I'll give him back to you. I want you to drop down to verse number 24 real quickly. Verse number 24. In verse number 24, real quick.
And when she had weaned him, she took him up with her with 3 bullocks and 1 ephah of flour and a bottle of wine, and brought him unto the house of the Lord in Shiloh.
Brought him to the house of the Lord, where?
In Shiloh.
In Shiloh. So God named the place. Let me give you a couple more. I want you to turn now to the 7th century. Turn your Bibles down. To the 7th century. I don't hear nobody turning. You're not going to turn now? You just answered the question. Why won't you turn now? You got 16 prophets.
Teach me.
Yeah, 16 writing prophets. All of them wrote, preached, and did that work between the 9th century and the 5th century. Every one of them. Between the 9th century and the 5th century. When you come to the 7th century, you got 4 writing prophets. You got Jeremiah, you got Nahum, you got Habakkuk, and you have Zephaniah. Let's turn to Jeremiah real quickly. Let's turn to Jeremiah real quickly. Jeremiah. And I want you to look at something, and please pay attention to this. Jeremiah chapter 7. Jeremiah chapter 7. And I want you to look at verses 12 through 14. Jeremiah chapter 7. Notice what this place.
But go ye now unto my place which is in Shiloh.
Go ye now to my place which is in Shiloh.
Where I set my name at the first.
What? Hold it. Wait a minute. Wait a minute now. All truth has to run in parallel lines. And no one truth is going to contradict any other truth, or it wouldn't be true. All truth has to run in parallel lines. Now, we started off in the book of Deuteronomy. Well, God says he was going to name the place. We've walked all the way down now to the 7th century. And verse number 12, read that verse again for us.
But go ye now unto my place.
Go ye now unto my place.
Which is in Shiloh.
Which is in Shiloh.
Where I set my name at the first.
Where I set my name at the first. Read a little bit more.
And see what I did to it.
Oh, see what I did to Shiloh. See, Shiloh is gone now. You know why Shiloh is gone? Because during the period of the Judges, Shiloh and God's people became so wicked, he allowed through divine discipline the Philistines to destroy Shiloh. And God was not going to protect Shiloh because the tabernacle was there, and he was not going to protect Jerusalem because the temple was there. And he is now, through Jeremiah, is letting these people know who's getting ready to go into Babylonian captivity. You don't straighten your lives out, I'm going to destroy Jerusalem just like he did 606, 597, 586 BC, and the last time, 2 Chronicles 36, verse number 19, where he destroyed, where Nebuchadnezzar burned the city down. Nebuchadnezzar burned it down. 2 Chronicles 36, 19. Now we have a recapitulation of it, of this prophet Jeremiah. Read it, please.
See what I did to it for the wickedness of my people Israel. And now because ye have done all these works, said the Lord, and I spake unto you, rising up early and speaking, but ye heard not, and I called you, but ye answered not.
Now here, what you have? You have God destroyed the place that he named. And when God destroyed the place that he named, neighbor, that's when he renamed Jerusalem. That's when he renamed Jerusalem. Turn your Bibles to Psalms chapter 7. Psalms 78, the 78th division of the book of Psalms. The 78th division of the book of Psalms. The 78th division of the book of Psalms. Notice something with me, please. The 78th division of the book of Psalms. And I want you to look at verse number 60. Verse number 60.
So that he forsook the tabernacle of Shiloh.
He forsook the tabernacle of Shiloh.
The tent which he placed among men.
Now notice something. He forsook that. That same thing Jeremiah just says. But when did he rename a place? Drop down to verse 67.
Moreover, he refused the tabernacle of Joseph.
Now Joseph represents what kingdom? Joseph represents the kingdom of Judah. Read.
And chose not the tribe of Ephraim.
Hold it. Ephraim represents what kingdom? Ephraim represents the northern kingdom. So now the northern kingdom go into Assyrian captivity in 722 BC. The southern kingdom goes into Babylonian captivity for a period of 70 years. So now you got the northern kingdom gone, the southern kingdom gone. Read it, please.
But chose the tribe of Judah.
But he chooses the tribe of Judah. Hold it, wait a minute. You remember? The nation of Israel were united under three kings. Those three kings were Saul, David, and Solomon. At the death of Solomon, Rehoboam, his son, ascended to the throne. At the very outset of Rehoboam's reign, God divided the nation as an act of judgment because of the nation's idolatry, sending 10 tribes to the north, constituting the northern kingdom, the kingdom of Israel, capital Samaria, sending 2 tribes to the south, constituting the southern kingdom, the kingdom of Judah, capital Jerusalem. You see, Judah remained faithful to the Lord until Jeremiah's day. They remained faithful to the Lord. Those 10 tribes went to Judah went there, and Benjamin supported Judah. Now read it, please.
And he built a sanctuary like high palaces, like the earth.
Go back to verse 67. Okay.
He refused the tabernacle of Joseph.
He refused the tabernacle of Joseph.
And chose not the tribe of Ephraim.
So he chose not the northern kingdom, the southern kingdom. Read.